Hello, my name is Dan Skipbound, and this is the Top 5 Weekly. And this week, in honor of The Irishman, we're doing three special episodes, and this is the third episode based off of The Irishman. And we've already done Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro, and this time around, we're going to do Al Pacino. And I couldn't ask for two better people to talk about Mr. Al Pacino movies more than my two guests that are going to be here with me, Mr. Jeremy the Adam Adams and Mr. Kirk Kolakowski, both of whom have been on previous episodes, but I'm glad to have them back. Jeremy, are you excited to be talking about Al Pacino, and are you glad to be back?
Oh, I'm absolutely glad to be back. The last one we did with Christian Bale was so much fun. And we've got another actor who is probably equally good to Christian Bale. One of the all-time legends. And I'm always excited to talk about a tremendous, icon like this. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And he's done so many movies. It'll be interesting to see what we come up with.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the fun parts about that, the show. And Kirk, obviously, you've been part of those two other previous episodes.
Yeah.
I'm just, I went back to the well one too many times, maybe. I don't know, but
I hope not.
you know your stuff. So I was like, I got to get someone that knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hit the trifecta here. Three of my favorites: De Niro, Scorsese, and Al Pacino. And again, like Jeremy said, and I think I said this for the last two shows too. It's there are really no wrong answers. It's just nitpicking over order at this point. So I'm excited to see what everybody has on their list.
All right. Well, with that saying, the first person up here on my board next to me is Mr. Jeremy the Adam Adams. So Jeremy, go ahead, fire away with number 5. And if you get something that somebody else has, we're going to skip over you and we're going to talk about that later.
Right. Perfect. All right. So my number 5, partially I'm picking this because I love this movie and I absolutely think it's one of Al Pacino's best performances, but I'm also picking it to mess with Dan because I know he's not a huge fan of this movie, but it is the 1979 Norman Jewison film And Justice for All, which that's
my number 5 too, so I get to talk about it.
All right. Well, we can talk about it. So,
yeah,
you went to me first. I'll go ahead and lead it off. But yes, directed by Norman Jewison. This is a film that basically is kind of a dark comedy sort of court movie in which Al Pacino plays a lawyer who, through a series of events, finds himself defending a judge who he's, been in many cases. He's had to present many cases to this judge, and now he's got to defend the judge on a murder charge. And it doesn't take too long for him to basically figure out the judge is as guilty as sin, yet it's still his job to defend this guy. And, the story, the plot itself is really cool and interesting. But what's really amazing about this movie is it's really about insanity. Like almost everybody in this movie besides Pacino is just a crazy person. You've got the judge. You've got jacks Like Jack Warden and Jeffrey Tambor and Jack Warden. And they all work in the system, lawyers, judges, different things, and they're all just crazy. And the whole system, as the movie goes on, is just, it's out of whack. It's unfair. Things don't add up. And as Al Pacino is presenting this case for someone that he despises and is, the worst of them. This is a person who's supposed to represent all that is just, and he's guilty, and he has to represent this guy. You just see it all weighing on Al, and it all builds to the final iconic scene where he says the line, you're out of order, and has this great monologue. And I think the reason that this movie makes my list and not, a lot of other ones that I could have picked is because this is earlier in Al's career, and it's a modulated performance where you see him gradually boiling. He's pretty subtle early on, and everything is boiling up. And when it finally gets to that ending, it all explodes. And it's just perfect the way that the movie builds it up and that Al builds it up. And if you go a little later in his career to the 90s and 2000s, I think it was a little more over the top. It didn't have the level of subtlety that you see in some of the earlier films. And it's definitely top 5 for me. I'll turn it over to you, Kirk.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. This is probably my favorite courtroom drama film, because most of the time when you watch a courtroom drama, the courtroom is just a stand-in for something else. It's the background, and there's something else going on. This movie is about the courtroom and about the system and about the toll it takes on the people who are either working in it or going through it. And like Jeremy said, Al Pacino is surrounded by all these people who are just can't take it anymore, who've dealt with all this injustice in the justice system and are just cracking under the pressure, or being, just chewed up and spit out under the weight of it. And him dealing with that, like Jeremy said, to him coming to the realization that this isn't what it's supposed to be, and this is destroying people's lives. And my favorite Pacino, you're going to see on my list, my favorite Pacino is when he's, when he, especially in his early performances, is when it's him dealing with that stress and that pressure and the world caving in on him. And he does that so great. And like Jeremy said, it all builds up to that final scene where he just explodes. And, I think this movie, I think that people focus so much on the last scene and they consider it just like another shouty Al Pacino performance, but there's so much subtlety and so much great acting building up to that, and so many different levels, so many different things he does in this movie. So yeah, it's one of my favorite movies, and it's one of my favorite Pacino performances.
God bless you, Kirk.
Yeah, no, man,
see, we agree on some things, Jeremy.
Yeah, there we go.
We all can't put the same thing on our list, and I'm glad you guys put in Justice for All. I mean, I honestly, when it comes to courtroom dramas and Al Pacino, it's not up there on my list, but I know it's a good movie, whether, despite what Jeremy thinks of my opinion of it. I know it's a good movie, and I know it's a great courtroom drama. I just don't think of it in those genres or Al Pacino or courtroom as high as you guys do. So I'm just glad that you guys had a chance to talk about it. But that leads us to me, and we'll find out if my number 5 is on anybody else's list. My number 5 is Heat, Lieutenant Vincent Hanna. Does anybody have Lieutenant Vincent Hanna on
in
their
Heat?
list?
No.
From Heat?
That was a tough one to leave off, but no.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. This guy is a fantastic. Al Pacino gives a phenomenal role in this movie, and it's not a short movie. It's a long movie, and of course we get the scene with him and Robert De Niro, who's the crook, who's the heist guy. But we get to see the backstory of these guys. It isn't just, well, the policeman is trying to catch the bad guy or the thief or whatever. We get to see their personal lives, what they're going through. And I think I love it when you get to see Scorsese, Al Pacino do these roles where his backstory is something that's fascinating, and his relationships and stuff like that is up there on the screen, and it makes him more personable with the people watching the movie. Is he a police officer searching for a criminal? Sure he is, but it doesn't mean he doesn't have lives, and there's daughters involved, and there's all kinds of, it's got a great cast. But when you anchor a movie with De Niro and Pacino, Michael Mann, it's probably if I had to do a top 5, Michael Mann, it would definitely be my number 1. Maybe down the road we will do a top 5 Michael Mann, but I'm just getting a message from Kirk now. Jeez. Weird. So I had Lieutenant Vincent Hanna as my number 5. And Jeremy, you got anything to say about Lieutenant Vincent Hanna from Heat?
Absolutely. It would be right there at my 6 or 7. Like I said, it was hard to leave it off. I think one of the things you have to really look at with Heat is if you strip all of the crime stuff away and the whole heist plot and everything, and you just look at Al Pacino's character, it's a story of a guy who's trying to struggle his profession and his career with a family life, and how difficult that is, and what a losing battle that is sometimes. And I think he plays that beautifully in that film, and that really kind of brings a lot of richness to his character that you don't always see in a lot of cop, sort of stories. And the relationship he has with his wife, played by Diane Venora, and even more so with his stepdaughter, played by Natalie Portman, and kind of what her character's going through and how those two characters connect. As a step parent myself, those scenes always resonate. So yeah, it's a tremendous performance and obviously a great film. It was, like I said, just right there at the edge for me, not quite getting in, but absolutely, a good pick.
Kirk?
It'd probably be top 10 for me. I think we had the same conversation on the De Niro episode because somebody brought up De Niro for his performance in this movie, and I think the thing that really bogs it down for both of them is you have that great scene between the two of them in the middle, and like you said, Dan, it's a very long movie and it's a very dense movie. There's a lot of subplots, a lot of side characters, a lot of other stuff going down. I think sometimes the two of them almost get lost in the shuffle between those two. With everything else going on, so it didn't crack the top 5 for me because of that. Like, I don't think he's given enough to do as he is in some of these other movies I picked. But yeah, it's still not a bad pick.
All right, so we're gonna go back to Jeremy with his number 4. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I wanted to do something a little more late career for Al Pacino, and there are a few different choices you could go with, but I decided to go with a movie that I think he really digs deep and gives a very pained and great performance in, and that's Christopher Nolan's Insomnia. I don't know if anyone has that one on their list. Okay.
No, but it was like 5, 6, 7 in there.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm glad you had a chance to talk about it because I love it.
I just think if you look at the arc of Pacino's career and you kind of go through the 90s and into the early 2000s, I think he had been kind of getting into a little bit of a rut where he was playing a lot of very over the top, very larger than life kind of performances. Like the Devil's Advocate was just a few years before that, where he's just the absentee landlord, and he's just at a 10 for the whole movie. So I think in Insomnia, you really do see him kind of going back a little bit, to digging a little deeper and going back to where he started with this character study of this cop who, something happened. He did something as a LAPD officer that's really weighing on his conscience. And he goes to Alaska, and he's basically in this mental state where he can't sleep. He's, as the title says, he's got insomnia, and he's just this really tortured guy, and they're hunting this killer. And then, as the story goes on, the killer actually starts playing this cat and mouse game with him. And it's in a lot of ways, it's a restrained performance, but there's a lot of pain and anger and just so much emotion in his performance. And to see a great actor like Al Pacino play against a great actor like Robin Williams is obviously always very rewarding. And I think it may be a little underrated in Al Pacino's performances, but it's right up there at the top for me. So I have to single out Insomnia.
Kirk, you got any thoughts on Insomnia?
Yeah, that's not a bad pick. I haven't seen Insomnia since it came out with, probably, 16, 17 years now. And I remember it being a good performance. And it's actually a movie I've been meaning to go back and rewatch recently. If I did, I would probably have this like close to my top 10 because I remember him being good in it. I just don't remember a whole lot of detail. So that's the only reason it didn't make my list, or wasn't under consideration.
Yeah, I always go back to Insomnia as one of my favorite Pacino roles. But when you're trying to do 5, it's so hard because he's got, easily 10 that could fit into 5. Any day of the week. I'm looking at my list and I'm thinking to myself, how did I get it down to 5? I got like 3 honorable mentions. And then Jeremy mentions 2 more great roles. And, you got 3 Oscar winners with Hilary Swank in there as well. And, she won 2 Oscars, she's got as many as Robin Williams and Al Pacino did combined, but they're all amazing in there. And I think the Insomnia really kind of is what really makes the role, because he gets into this place, this space in his mind that really is kind of out there that you don't see with Pacino roles. So very good choice, Jeremy. Kirk, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is The Godfather Part 2.
Have that higher.
Okay.
We'll get back to
that. I figured.
That's fine, Kirk. I'm probably going to go through the same thing right here with my number 4. My number 4 is Son of a Woman, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade. Anybody got that on their list?
I do not have that.
I do not have it, Dan.
Holy shnikes.
No,
Lieutenant
I do not.
Colonel Frank Slade in The Scent of a Woman. Of course, everybody remembers the courtroom scene, or the scene where he's being judged about Chris O'Donnell's character is being judged on some things that happened to him that really weren't his fault. And he, I'm going to take a flamethrower to this place. Everybody remembers that scene. But I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of subtleties in this film where he's trying to teach Chris O'Donnell things when they're in a hotel room, and the different things, you know, you don't see that kind of Pacino, and he deserved an Oscar for this film. Maybe he should have deserved an Oscar for some films before that. We do that. We could do that with De Niro. We could do that with Pacino. We could do that with Scorsese. He ends up getting his Best Actor Oscar for this role, and he did deserve it. But I think if you look at the character of Lieutenant Frank Slade, he does a lot, especially when you're playing a blind man. Obviously, you know, he made blind look real. I mean, I didn't think he could see, even though I knew he could see. We all knew he could see, but it seemed like he made a blind man look real. And the whole relationship he had with Chris O'Donnell in the film, and all that subtlety that he put into the character in the hotel room and walking here and going here, and you know, and Chris O'Donnell, he thought, well, I'm just going to do this character and I'm just going to be like, I'm making some money so I can go back home. And he ends up in this whole adventure with this crazy ex-colonel, you know. So what do you got? Any thoughts about Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade, Jeremy?
I mean, I would never deny that it's a good performance, and you know, it had obviously some iconic moments came from it. It just, I don't know if maybe I'm a little tainted by the Oscar thing, because I think of it kind of the way that I think of like Paul Newman winning for The Color of Money, where it's a good performance from that actor, but I can think of so many more performances that really resonate so much more for me. And I think that, you know, there are some subtle moments in it, but I also think he overplays it a bit in that movie for me, for my taste. But still, it's good. He had a good rapport with Chris O'Donnell. Maybe the Oscar thing for me, it's always kind of been an overrated one in my mind, and it isn't up there for me. But I would never take it away from you. You know, obviously, it's Son of a Woman, and you know, somebody was going to have it.
Yeah, Kirk, you got any thoughts on Son of a Woman?
Yeah, it's similar to what Jeremy said. I think, you know, it's been a while since I saw this one too, and I think, you know, probably unfairly, I mean, this is the stereotypical, you know, late career Pacino performance with the hoo-ah and everything. That's what everybody goes to. And you know, like Jeremy said again, the what deserved or not, the Oscar's got a reputation as being a Lifetime Achievement Award. Yeah. So, you know, it got a lot of baggage with it that I may unfairly judge it by, but it's not a bad performance. And you know, like Jeremy said, I'm not going to say it shouldn't be on your list. You know, it might make my top 10, top 15. But yeah, it's a solid performance.
All right, that means we're going back to Jeremy with number 3. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. We'll see what happens here, Jeremy.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when I say the 2 words, The Godfather.
I do not have The Godfather, Kirk.
Neither of you?
The Godfather is my number 3, so let's go.
Oh, okay.
All right, so there you go again.
All right, so I'll take it away. So, you know, when I think of particularly The Godfathers 1 and 2, I think there's an arc that the character of Michael Corleone goes on. And The Godfather, it really is, you're being introduced to this character. You're seeing him at one stage of his life, and it takes him through to a point where, you know, basically you're seeing a guy being making the wrong decisions and turning to a life of crime. And it's amazing, you know, being such a young actor, really getting his first major shot in this film. What he does in the movie is incredible. It's iconic. And, you know, obviously there's so many other iconic performances in that movie too, with Marlon Brando and James Caan and so many great actors. I think sometimes people even overlook Pacino. The Oscars certainly did that year, putting him in the supporting role and everything, when really the movie is Michael's story. I mean, Vito Corleone looms large, but it really is Michael Corleone's journey that he goes on. And I think it's the first part of his journey that you see in this film. And I actually think he goes to some deeper places later on with the series. So that's why I didn't put it at the very top, but there was no way that, you know, this introduction to this character wasn't going to make my top 5.
Kirk?
Yeah, it's the thing I love about one of the things I love about The Godfather is that you can watch it over and over again and always find something new. Yeah. And a big part of that is Pacino's performance. It's very layered. It's very nuanced. I was listening to a podcast a few months back, and someone on the show mentioned that they always thought that Michael from the beginning wanted to be a part of the crime family. And I'd never thought that before. And I went back and watched it through that lens, and it changed everything. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And that's how he plays this part. There's so many different ways. It's, like I said, nuance and layers, and it's just so deep. It's such a real, full, fleshed out character. And I feel like compared to Godfather 2, I had it at 4. I feel like Jeremy said there's the arc. I think you get more of the arc in this movie, and there's more. He has more going on and goes through more changes in this movie than he does in 2, which is why I put a little higher. But they're both great performances, and like I said, he does so much throughout this movie. And I could not put it on the list.
Well, now here I am. I have to explain why I don't have The Godfather on the list. As anybody knows me, if you look at my letterbox, Godfather's in my top 5 films of all time. But how I look at The Godfather is I look at it as Brando being Brando and Brando giving that performance. And then Sonny Corleone and Robert Duvall, those guys have big roles in The Godfather. Whereas I don't look at The Godfather per se as Michael's movie. And it's not like he doesn't have a good role in it. And so I didn't want to take away from what I felt like is the real Michael Corleone, Al Pacino performance. And that's in a different movie. So that's why I didn't put it on there. But it doesn't mean I do not like the movie. I absolutely love this movie. It's tied for my number 1 movie of all time, number 2 movie of all time with Godfather Part 2. I don't have a number 3 on my list. I have 2. It's tied. 2 movies that tied at number 2 on my list. So that's how
you can also be forgiven for only having one Godfather and trying to make room for other Pacino roles. Absolutely. So we will give you that.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too. I wanted to try to get as many as I could on there. So that was you guys 3. My 3 is another iconic Al Pacino role. Hopefully we won't get too many rolling of eyes on this one. Scarface, Tony Montana. I absolutely love this movie, but I do not love the fact that Scarface turned into like a symbol for gangster rappers and gangsters and killing people and all that stuff. That I do not abide by, that this is like some kind of a symbol for killing people and gangsters. He came up in a rough life, and he was poor, and he just kind of got in there. This is really, I think, maybe you guys can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but this is really the first movie where you've seen a drug-fueled, crazy stuff going on, where we get this a bunch of times after Scarface, but it might be like the first time we have this cocaine filled.
It's one of the first like major movies, probably. I mean, there were films in the 70s and stuff. Even Pacino himself had played a drug addict in like the movie Panic at Needle Park and stuff. But yeah, for a huge, budget crime, epic kind of movie like this, to have to indulge that much in drug sequences it was still pretty shocking for people at that time.
Yeah, Brian De Palma, written by Oliver Stone and directed by Brian De Palma. So there was some good fingers involved in that that soup. Is you got too many hands in the soup. Well, the more hands in this soup, the better. This movie, Michelle Pfeiffer, I think this is her breakout performance. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. And another guy who won an Oscar later on, which is sorely underrated, is F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah.
Oh God, I love.
He's great.
Whenever I see F. Murray Abraham in something, I always light up, because he's a guy who just doesn't work as much as he deserves to work, because he's a phenomenal actor. But I love, of course, Say Hello to My Little Friend, and those. He just had that control, and he wanted to keep that control. He didn't want to lose that power that he gained, because he knew what it was like down at the bottom and scraping and clawing his way up. And I loved a lot of people of the accent, but I actually love the accent that you wouldn't even, I'll be honest with you, if you didn't know it was Al Pacino, he does a great job of being a Latino and all that stuff. I mean, so that I had to have Scarface, Tony Montana on mine. Jeremy, anything else to say about Scarface, Tony Montana?
Well, I personally love this movie. It's one of my favorite crime films. it's a little over the top 80s indulgent sort of movie, and I can get why some people don't love it, but for me it's great. It really touches a nerve for me, and he's fantastic in it. It probably would have been 7 or 8 for me. It's definitely top 10. It just, I don't know, it's it's almost like I might use the word comic booky for it. It's a little more out there, as opposed to some of the more grounded stuff that he's done in some of these other films. But you can't take anything away from it. I mean, he's Tony Montana. It's an iconic character. It's just, it's pitched in a different key than some of the other stuff that I chose for my top 5.
Oh, you're right about that. Kirk, you got any thoughts on Tony?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love this movie too. I love this performance. Technically, it may, from a technical aspect, it might not be his best, but it's so much fun, and you can tell he's having so much fun with it. And it's such a fun character, and he makes the character, even though he's this vicious gangster, makes the character so likable, and you kind of want to hang out with him. And it's just very different from anything else he's done. And at least it's up to this point in his career, and it's a fun, like you said, it's got the 80s, and it's a little cheesy, it's a little, it's not a perfect movie, but it's a fun movie. And I mean, it would have been my 6 or 7, but I love it's on your list. I love you that you made it.
Somebody had to have that.
I love the movie. I could go back to watching Scarface all the time. It's just one of those movies. It doesn't get old, no matter what year it came out in. All right, so that means we're down to number 2. We're going to get some interesting. We may be all talking about the same movie here pretty soon. Jeremy, what's your number 2?
Well, my number 2 is Al Pacino playing a real life person in a really powerful one of his most powerful performances. I think that would be Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon.
I have that higher.
That's my number.
All right.
2.
Okay, so
I have it higher. Yeah, for the double list. Yes.
Yeah, all right.
He has it higher, so we have to wait on. Okay,
yeah.
All right. Got to go to Kirk's number 2 then.
My number 2 is another real life character he played, Frank Serpico.
I have it in my honorable mentions.
Yeah, I didn't quite get there for me, but I would have been saddened if someone didn't have it.
Sure. Yeah, I recently rewatched this for the first time in a while, and again, this is my favorite kind of Pacino, where he is just under stress and has the weight of the world on his shoulders, and watching him, just his face and his eyes as he deals with that. And he goes with so many emotions. Again, he plays Frank Serpico. He creates this very likable, very relatable character, and then you see what he goes through. And again, nobody does drama and just that trauma and stress the way Pacino does. And he just the way he expresses that, and he does. Again, this is another one where he has his shouty moments, but it's very reserved, and it's earned. The moments where he loses his mind and blows up is very earned, because it builds and it builds and it builds to that. And every scene of this, it's just the scene where he's at the party dancing with and he's having a good time and meeting all these new people, and where he's kind of fooling around with the cops, and the more serious points where he's really realized his life is in danger. Again, another just fully developed, and you hear the stories about he worked, got to know Frank Serpico and worked with him really closely, and got to know the story. And it was he was very passionate about this movie. So yeah, and that comes through. So it's obviously one of my favorite performances of his.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I absolutely love Serpico. I just saw an interview, a 2-hour interview with Pacino, and they brought up Serpico and the scene with him, the cop, like, hey, dude, man, just be part of the team. Be team
player.
Be a team player. Be with the rest. And he's like, no, I can't be with you guys. You guys are doing something illegal. It's wrong. So much where he had to leave the country, and he lived in, I believe, Sweden or Switzerland, one of the countries over there.
I think Switzerland.
We shot in the face, right?
Yeah,
shot in the face, and then he had to leave the country.
Yeah, and so he knew how difficult what he was doing. He was bucking the system that is hard to do when you're doing that. And it's one of the. I mean, you could see that this guy was on a trajectory to be great, just right then and there. I think it was 72 was Serpico, if I'm not mistaken.
73, yeah.
70. I mean, and that was between his roles in The Godfather. But he was incredible. I absolutely love Serpico. I guess you go to Scorsese, De Niro, and now Pacino, and it's like, man, these guys just had so many great roles in the 70s and 80s. And they kind of, as filmmaker, well, Scorsese is a filmmaker. He kept on making some great films into the 2000s and today. But those guys kind of fell off. But that 20-year gap of the 70s and 80s for Pacino and De Niro were just phenomenal. What do you have to say about Serpico, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, this was between the Godfathers, and I think it's one of the most important movies in Pacino's career, because coming off of The Godfather, was he just going to be, associated with that movie? Was that going to define him? Was it going to be like a one-hit wonder? And getting the opportunity to play this character Serpico in this story, and be on the opposite side, obviously, from Michael Corleone, and playing a very moral person who stands for law and order, was very important. And I think if you look at the 70s, you look at these great young actors and them finding working relationships with directors. And, De Niro found Scorsese, and Pacino found Sidney Lumet. And the films that he made with Lumet, I think, are just right up there in defining that decade. So, yeah, you definitely have to mention Serpico.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so even though Dog Day is your number one, Kirk, since Jeremy and I both have it at number 2, we're both going to let you talk about it first.
Yeah, you get it first, Kirk.
Then we'll go after you, and then we'll start getting into our number ones, which I know you have later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Dog Day Afternoon, this is in my top 3 all time, and it's not only my favorite Pacino performance, I think it's my favorite performance by an actor in a film ever. I just love the way he captures his character. Again, just a sad sack in over his head, and watching him, you can see it. He draws you in, and you go through this day with him, and just his eyes in this movie, just watching his eyes. And again, this is another one where everybody does it for Attica, all the screaming and everything. But just those subtle moments where he's sitting there in the bank like this, just trying to figure out what to do next, and trying to stay one step ahead, knowing it's not going to work out. And just see the sweat pour off his face and his body, and deal with the tellers, and dealing with Sonny, and dealing with his friend John Cazale, and the cops outside, and just watching all close in on him, and again, just how he emotes that, and how he expresses that, and how he makes you feel that with him. I could watch this movie 5 times in a row and not get bored just watching his performance. The movie around him is great. Again, like I said, John Cazale is great, and a lot of great, a lot of great supporting performances. And just that whole idea of him, that twist in the middle where you find out he's doing this, to get a sex change for his lover, and the desperation that comes from that, and just how ahead of that time, back doing something like that back in the 70s, kind of unheard of. So just it was an amazing story, and like I said, I can't say enough about the performance. It's my favorite. I love Pacino. He's probably my favorite actor, and this head and shoulders above anything else he's done for me. I love this movie.
All right, Jeremy, you go first.
I mean, I can't add too much, to what Kirk said there. He's absolutely right. It is one of the standout performances of, an incredible decade of acting. You have the stuff that De Niro and Nicholson and all these great Hoffman, all these great actors were doing. And right there at the top of it is Dog Day Afternoon. Again, Pacino's building his career. He's building off of the Godfather, and when he had played this criminal mastermind, now he's playing a low-level criminal, a guy at the very bottom, a guy who really has no idea what he's doing. He has this cockamamie scheme to rob a bank, and all goes out of control really fast. And you're completely sold, 100%. But who this guy is, where he's at on the social ladder, the situation that he's in, and every revelation that you get about him with his relationship with his wife, and then this relationship that he has, with this gay relationship. It all is, you just completely buy all of it, and it's all so natural. And the end, it's one of those films that it has a great final shot where you get Pacino's face, and just kind of, I'm not going to give anything away, but just resting on his face as he's kind of realizing what's going on in the situation that he's in at the end, and the reality of it all. It's great. you know, in a career that's known for a lot of monologues and speeches and shouting, and this film act has some of that. Obviously, that's great silent acting that you get there at the end, and it's a performance that really encaptures it all.
No, yeah, wow, you guys have said so much about it. One of the things I want to mention about the film is that it has a claustrophobia about it.
Yeah,
and that the cops, when the cops start showing up, they're over there, and the guy, lieutenant's like, get back, and then some of that is completely ad lib. People don't realize that that whole Attica scene is completely ad lib. It was like a line producer or somebody said to Pacino, says, hey, say Attica, because that was going on at the time.
Yeah, Attica, that was in the news.
Yeah. And we were like, he knew that would garner some emotions, and it really did in the film and whatnot. But the thing about it is, Pacino, that he's trying to figure out what the heck he's got himself into the whole time. This whole, and we could all put ourselves in his shoes in a way that it's like, why do we do this? Why do we make this mistake in our lives and stuff like that? And just to mention John Cazale, we brought up Robert De Niro when we brought up other films, and this guy had 5 films to his resume in the 70s, and they were all phenomenal films. I mean, anybody in their right mind, if you had The Godfather, Godfather Part 1, Dog Day Afternoon, The Deer Hunter, and
Conversation,
that is your filmography. I mean, you're set for life. I mean, you'll be getting tables, and everybody will be falling over backwards to be like, hey, come on in, Ed. This guy died after The Deer Hunter, and those 5 films are always going to be remembered for John Cazale. And I'd love to see a movie of John. Someone, I don't know who could portray John Cazale, but I'd love to see a movie about him and his whole life and what led to his death and all that stuff. This guy is phenomenal. I know this is Al Pacino, but I just
there's
a great
documentary. Yeah, you've seen it. Yeah.
I own the documentary.
I knew it was you, right? I think I knew it was you is the name of it.
Yeah, I knew it was you. Really, well, we're gonna get to that pretty soon. But yeah, I love Sonny Worthick and Dog Day Afternoon. This is a great performance.
And I heard I saw an interview with Pacino once, and he said that they filmed the movie and he went through and they were done, and then to come back, I don't know if it was weeks or months later, had to do reshoots, and he couldn't get the character back. It was just gone, and he was never able to do it again. And it just, that just shows you, like,
how deep into it he was,
deep he is, and how effortless he makes it look, and how seamless he makes it look. So many big actors today, when they're acting, you see so much of the effort, and with him, he just melts into his characters. That's the thing about Pacino. I don't know an actor who melts into his characters the way he does.
No,
especially early in his career.
Yeah, even when he plays a football coach or something.
Yeah.
Like you could believe him as a football coach.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jeremy, what is your number one? I'm assuming it's the same as mine.
I think it is. It is the second one. Is The Godfather Part 2. I can absolutely see Kirk's point on this, that in the first movie you really get a lot of Michael's arc and everything, and him going from being this war hero to now going into the life of crime and taking over the crime family. It's a big arc in the first film, but I think why the second one resonates so much with me, and particularly his performance in this film, is because he's made the decision to go into a life of crime, but he's still kind of at the beginning of the movie, he's still kind of on top of things. He thinks that, he's going to take the family legitimate, and, maybe the decisions that he's made, the murders that he's committed, all the stuff that he's done were just a means to an end. But the arc of Godfather 2 really is those things he's gonna basically lose his soul. Like you see this guy just totally melt away And you see, you know, with everything that he goes through and everything that happens in the second film, particularly we know what happens between him and his brother Fredo. You see that there really is not much there at the end of the day. Like Michael Corleone's got this tremendous intellect and this mind for crime and everything, but at the end of the day, he's kind of soulless. And the way that Pacino takes you into that and goes to the depths in that, and you know, the what happens ultimately with Fredo and that decision he makes, it's like, man, this guy, how can this guy do this? And I also think that the reason that I think there's a little more here with Pacino is that it gets much deeper in his relationship with his wife, Kay, too, and how that relationship falls apart, and the ultimate revelations that are made between Kay and Michael are really powerful. And again, I said it in Dog Day Afternoon, but it's also true here. You get the last final shot of Al Pacino just sitting silently, and you look into his face and you just see him sitting there in a chair, and it's like, you know everything about that guy. He just communicates this entire journey that you've gone through to just absolute desolation, and it's incredible. You know, I think the Godfather movies are exciting, and there's a lot of, you know, entertainment and stuff there, but really at the end of the day, it's the story of a guy losing his soul. I mean, that's really what the Godfather is, and he just nails that in this movie. It's incredible. And I also think it gains a lot when you see it juxtaposed with his father as a young man, played by Robert De Niro, just beginning this whole thing and just starting on the road to crime and seeing the echoes of that against Michael just going down the tubes and losing everything. There's something about it that it is my favorite movie. I always say the second one, it just, for whatever reason, it resonates with me as few films do, and his performance in it is, you know, a big part of that. So it has to be my number one.
All right, Kirk. I know it's my number one, but since you had it at 3, I'll let you talk first.
And you had it at 4.
Yeah, it was right for 4. Yeah, 3. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't like. I mean, I had this at 3 and Godfather at 4. So I mean, it's not like there's a big gap in how I in you know, how I view these two. I mean, they're both great movies and great performances. It's hard for me to separate the two as far as my opinion on the movie and also the performance. But yeah, like Jeremy was saying, you see, like, the end of Godfather ends and it's like he won. And it has that dark twist at the end where it's like, oh man, this is good. But I mean, it's still, he won. He came out on top. And, you know, at the beginning of Godfather 2, he's still on the mountaintop, and that slowly starts to erode, and he does it to himself. It's his own obsession, his own unwillingness to let anything slide. You know, again, like Jeremy said, you have a lot of subtle, silent acting. That scene towards the end where, you know, where he says, you know, do you have to kill everybody? He's like, not everybody, Tom, just my enemies. And just that, he's just so maniacal, and so much of that, just him, you know, you see him when he's talking to the senator at the beginning, and just that calm, measured, you know, just, I'm going to destroy everything in my way, and you're not going to see it coming because I'm just going to sit here, and you're not going to, you know, just total poker face. And again, it's just so much in his eyes and in what he doesn't say in this performance. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I get a little more out of Godfather 1 with him, but still there's so much to mine in this performance here.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like he goes to such a dark place in this film, and with the stuff going on with Hyman Roth and his brother and Mo Green, you're going to Las Vegas, you're going to Cuba, you're going to all these different places, and he's got to deal with so much, and yet still he's got to try to keep this family afloat, keep his own personal family, and that, of course, is the thing that goes by the wayside. Is something has to go, and the pain that he has to deal with when it comes to this stuff, you could just see it in his face. How this guy did not win an Academy Award for this role, I will never know.
Art Carney.
I mean, come on.
It's such a crime.
What is it? Something in Tonto? Something?
Harry and Tonto.
Come on. Come on.
It's a cute movie, by the way, but yeah, it's ridiculous. Absolutely insane.
I mean, this guy, he should have won the Best Actor award in 1974 for this role. This is like ridiculous that Al Pacino didn't win, but you know, and one of the things I love too is all these films have great quotes, and he's remembered by all these different quotes in the various movies too. So that's one thing that you can remember. You can go, oh, the quotes from Al Pacino quotes. He's got some great ones from the Godfather trilogy. But yeah, I mean, this this is my number one. I was not going to have anything else above this. And like I said, I kind of look at Brando as more of the one, and James Caan and Robert Duvall more so than him, and I'm entitled to be wrong, but so that's why I had Michael Corleone from The Godfather Part 2 as my number one. But like we always do, let's get into some honorable mentions. Jeremy, you got anything good?
Oh, I mean, there's so many. It's hard. I just got a few here. His first real starring role was in the I mentioned earlier, Panic in Needle Park, which is a low budget early 70s film where he does play a heroin addict, and it's interesting to go back to the beginning and see how much talent he had, right at the beginning. Serpico and Scarface were right there. I think a very underrated 80s crime film that he's really fantastic in, and it's a good whodunit sort of movie, is Sea of Love. That's a good film from the late 80s. Son of a Woman. This one I wanted to put it on, but it's such an ensemble. It's hard to kind of single him out. But Glenn Ross, he's great in it. And everyone, Jack Lemmon, everyone's incredible in that movie. And him and playing off of Jack Lemmon in the bar and everything is unforgettable. I have a feeling you're going to mention this one, Dan, but, I have to at least give a mention to Donnie Brasco, which is another one of his great crime roles, going to the other end, playing the over the hill older gangster who's, really kind of, at the low level and is a little bit pathetic and never had the respect that the other guys had, is really interesting. And then one thing, if you kind of research Pacino a little bit, one thing that you learn about him is he's a big lover of Shakespeare and like classical acting. So I just have to give a little shout out to his performance as Shylock in The Merchant of Venice, which is a very good Shakespeare adaptation.
Amazing. He's amazing in The Merchant of Venice. Nobody has seen that movie. Nobody. I mean, I was like, oh my God, this guy's freaking.
He's got a lot. He's got a lot of movies in his career that are a little forgotten. They're definitely worth checking.
Yeah. You got any Kirk? He hasn't mentioned yet.
Well, I mean, I definitely would have brought up Scarface. That would have been my number 6 or 7. That's right on the cusp for me. Great performance there. Donnie Brasco, as Jeremy said, that's a great. Most of my films are early career. I think all my films are early career that I picked my top 5. But Donnie Brasco might be my favorite late career performance of his. Like Jeremy said, a very just kind of desperate, pathetic guy. That's what when an actor can play like the king of the hill and the guy at the bottom of the heap. That's when he's good. I mean, he does both those so well. One that's really underseen that not a lot of people talk about is the Scarecrow movie he made with Gene Hackman. Yeah. That's an amazing performance from both. That's a great just 70s drama.
Unfortunately, haven't had a chance to see that one yet. It probably would have been mentioned if I. It's
very hard to find. I had a hard time tracking it down. I was really excited when I finally got to see it. But yeah, if you get a chance, check it out.
Yes.
What else? Yeah, Glenn Ross is what I would have mentioned. That's a great one. And also, again, going back to the Shakespeare thing, it's not really a performance; it's more of a documentary. But Searching for Richard, I've always really enjoyed that. That's where
looking for Richard.
Looking for Richard. Yeah, Looking for Richard. He's great in that because it really shows his love for Shakespeare and also just the craft of acting. If you really want to get inside his head when it comes to that stuff, that's a really great one to watch.
I believe it's the only one he directed too, so it's definitely a must-see for Pacino fans.
Yeah. Well, and if you guys ever heard of Inside the Actor's Studio, but he gives a 2-hour interview with Ellen Burstyn, and he brings up some of these backstories of some of these movies, especially Looking for Richard or Searching for Richard or whatever.
Looking for Richard, yeah.
So you're going to love that story of why he ended up getting to direct, why he ended up directing that. And it's a good story. So look for
Pacino in general is a great interview. Anytime you get a chance to listen to an interview of his, he has so many great stories. And like I said, his passion comes through. He's never talking just to build himself up or name drop. He's just really telling the story of his craft. And I love listening to him talk.
Yeah, he's so excited to talk and tell these stories, because they're so long ago and probably not a lot of people have heard. Movie that you guys haven't brought up that I really liked a lot was The Insider. He played a character by the name of Lowell Bergman.
Incredible.
Christopher Plummer and Russell Crowe, and he's fantastic in this movie. Another Michael Mann film. alongside. In one of his recent roles that I'll tell you what, you think he was just kind of going down here, just taking all these roles as all these different people and just not doing a great job. A movie that when I walked out, I was literally crying because I thought it was so great. And that's a movie called Danny Collins that came out a few years back, where he plays an aging singer. I know Christian Harloff, Christian Harloff would be making fun of it on some of this Collider stuff back in the day. And I'm like, no, Christian, don't be making fun of Danny Collins. He is fantastic in this role as his aging crooner. I guess you'd call him a crooner. And of course, his character in Any Given Sunday. I have to mention a sports film. Well, he's been in a couple sports films. Bobby Deerfield, where he played a race car driver, which nobody even knows exists except for people that know movies. But I loved him. I loved him as the football coach in Any Given Sunday. So, and of course, Jeremy mentioned Donnie Brasco. I just recently watched it, and a lot of people don't mention either is I believe Frankie and Johnny. Is it
Frankie and Johnny? Yeah,
Frankie, which you don't see him in romantic comedies that often. Yeah. And this is one of the few romantic comedies that Al Pacino is in, and so he's really good in Frankie and Johnny. But that is it for this episode of the Top 5 Weekly on Al Pacino. Jeremy, run down your 5.
Okay, so my number 5 was And Justice for All. My number 4 was Insomnia. My number 3 was The Godfather. My number 2 was Dog Day Afternoon. And my number 1 was The Godfather Part 2.
And Kirk?
Before I go, I just want to thank you, Dan, for having me on for all 3 of these shows. I had a great time. Love talking about this stuff, and especially these specific people. So thanks again for having me. Yeah, my number 5 was Injustice for All. My number 4 was Godfather Part 2. Number 3 was Godfather Part 1. Number 2 was Serpico. And number 1 was Dog Day Afternoon.
And mine was number 5 was from Heat, Lieutenant Vincent Hanna. From Scent of a Woman, number 4, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade. From Scarface, number 3, Tony Montana. Number 2, Dog Day Afternoon, Sonny Wurtzik. And number 1, The Godfather Part 2, Michael Corleone. Jeremy, where can you be found?
You can find me, Jeremy Paul Adams, on Facebook and on YouTube. And I'm also one of the showrunners at Full Metal Trivia, where we do trivia shows and all kinds of stuff over there. And then I think most people in this community are probably aware of the movie Trivia Schmodown, for which I am a question writer. So I check them out as well and see some of my work.
And Kirk?
I'm on Letterboxd. If you want to talk movies, Kirk Kowal on Letterboxd. I'm on the Full Metal page, all through that community. So if you're looking for me, you can definitely track me down there.
And you can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. Yeah, I'm that guy. No Instagram right now until I figure a way to get my Instagram back. Or you can find me. I write movie reviews and sports articles on a website called cinesportstalk.com. That's cinesportstalk.com. There's 2 things we know. We know sports and movies, and that's it. Don't ask me about anything else. I know nothing. So for Jeremy and Kirk and myself, goodbye. I guess I should have had that on there ahead of time.